So when we talk about movement, we talk about it in three different planes. We've got the sagittal plane, which is looking at it from the side. We've got the frontal plane, which is looking at it from the front or the back. And we've got the transverse plane, which is looking at it from above or below. When we look at movement, we want to try and look in as many planes as possible so that we're getting one big picture of how the person is actually moving. We can either do this by looking at it from the body as a whole, or we can look at the segments, or we can look at the joints and how they're moving in relation to one another. So if we look at a couple examples, if we look at running, we can talk about looking at someone running from the sagittal plane. So this would be like looking at them from this view from the side running. If we're looking at specific joints, if we're talking about the hip, we've got flexion and extension in that sagittal plane. If we look in the frontal plane, we've got abduction and adduction. I always remember between the two because adduction is like adding it back to the body. And then we've also got, for the hip, external rotation and internal rotation. So as I say, we can do this for the segments, the joints, and how they're moving in relation to each other as well. So as biomechanists, we like to use 3D motion capture so that we can capture the movement in all three planes and get a really good picture of how the person is moving. But because it's not accessible to the majority of the people, we still want to know as much about that movement as possible. So we tend to look at it from two different angles. So we tend to try and look at it from the sagittal plane and from the frontal plane. But this will depend totally on what movement it is you're actually analysing. But it is important to try and get more than one plane of motion, because if we say looking at a squat, if you're looking at somebody squat from the side, you have no idea what's going on in that frontal plane. We could have knees caving in, we could have what's going on, and you would have absolutely no idea. So hopefully that gives you a little introduction into the planes of movement and why it's important that we try and consider as many of these as possible when we are analysing movement. And hopefully at some point we'll bring out a little video in how you can use your phone to analyse your movement.